Ready? Okay, break. It's time for the High School Huddle. Your host, Jordan Hirsh, is getting set to break down all the action on the local gridirons in Bucks and Mercer Counties. Stats, conversation, inside analysis. It's all here on the High School Huddle. Proudly brought to you by the Capital Health System and Anthony Petsis and Associates right now on WBCB 1490 AM and 107.3 FM.
Welcome into another installment of the High School Huddle. I am your host, Jordan Hirsh, and boy, oh boy, do we have a fun show on tap for you this week. It is Pennsbury Neshaminy week here on WBCB. We're going to be doing a full breakdown of this game that's going off tomorrow. Falcons and Skins, game of the week. Rivalry game of the year, like it always is here in Bucks County. We've got full coverage for you on this show. Going to be talking about the Skins like we do every week. They're coming off of a tough loss against Central Bucks South as they look to continue their push into the postseason. Still have an outside shot now at getting home field advantage in the first round, but the path to that just got a whole lot tougher after the game last week. As for the Falcons, fresh off of their first win of the season, big-time W, a blowout victory over Abington last week. So despite Neshaminy having the much better record in this matchup, it's the Falcons that actually have the momentum entering tomorrow night's game. And of course, whenever Pennsbury and Neshaminy get together, you got to throw those records right out the window. This is probably going to be a dogfight like it is each and every time these two teams go at it. And like I said, full coverage on this show, breaking down Neshaminy, breaking down Pennsbury, breaking down the matchup as a whole. We're going to be talking to the guy who will be on play-by-play tomorrow at Falcon Field, the one and only Chris Ermer. He's going to be talking Pennsbury and Neshaminy, giving some insight into what he's experienced as the broadcaster of the Falcons this year, and really dive deep into Pennsbury as well as just what this rivalry means in this area. And then don't go anywhere for the end of the show as well, because when we're done talking about Pennsbury and Neshaminy, also going to be talking to Nottingham football head coach Milo McGuire. His team's got a big game against Steinert, their crosstown rival. It's rivalry week all over the place in Bucks and Mercer County this week. So we're going to be talking to Milo McGuire, big game for Nottingham against Steinert. But let's just get right into it with this Pennsbury and Neshaminy talk. We cover this game every year over on the YouTube channel, WBCB Sports. We will so, of course, once again tomorrow night. Chris Ermer, Gus Barber, Ben Goldstein, they've got the call from Falcon Field. 7 o'clock kickoff pregame gets you started right around 6:40. Last week, Neshaminy took on Central Bucks South. They fell 24-21 in a hard-fought game. They just didn't really seem to have the same intensity, though, that we're used to seeing out of the Skins in this one. The game did start out about as good as it could have possibly started for Neshaminy. They force a 3-and-out on the Titans' first drive, thanks in part to a bad snap on the first play from scrimmage for CB South. Then on the punt, the snap issues continued. The long snap hit the ground before making its way to the punter. That set Neshaminy up at the 11-yard line, and it took Michael Eckert only one play to find Mike Sassano in the end zone for an early touchdown. Skins went on top 7-0. Then the defense forced a second 3-and-out, but after that, the wheels kind of came off. Neshaminy would turn it over on 3 straight possessions. The Titans turned that into 17 points, took a 17-7 lead into the second quarter. Those turnovers, first it was Michael Eckert overthrowing his receiver on a crossing route for just his 3rd interception on the season. The next drive, Carter Klee couldn't handle a pitch on an option play. That led to a fumble. And then the drive after that, Klee fumbled off of just a regular handoff. It turned into a scoop and score by CB South linebacker Jack Bartolillo, making it 17-7 as CB South kind of just blitzed Neshaminy after they got off to about as tough of a start as you could have through their first 2 drives. Neshaminy would cut the deficit to 3 on a Michael Eckert touchdown run late in the second quarter, but it was after a long kickoff return On the ensuing kickoff, CB South was set up inside the Neshaminy 30. They respond in 2 plays, taking a 24-14 lead into the break. Out of halftime, it was a defensive battle. With just under 5 minutes to go in the fourth, Eckert took it to the house, a 36-yard touchdown run on a 2nd and 25 play. That made it a 3-point game, but unfortunately for the Skins, they could not get the stop on defense. They would never get the ball back. They fall to 6-3. And taking a look at some of the stats from this game, not a bad game in the box score for Eckert. 21 of 30, 237 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Also 10 carries, 61 yards, and 2 scores on the ground. Carter Klee, 16 carries, 73 yards, 3 catches for 60 yards for Klee. Back-to-back games for him with 100-plus scrimmage yards. Speaking of guys with back-to-back games with 100 or more yards, Brock Williams continues to be the focal point of this Neshaminy passing game. 10 catches for Williams, 108 yards for him. Nick Sassano had 3 catches for 28 yards, mixed it up on defense with 8 tackles. His brother Mike had that touchdown catch from 11 yards out for his only reception of the game. And then Dan McGarity, the strong safety, just continued to play well here in the second half of the season with a sack, 9 tackles, and 2 tackles for loss. Another good game for Dan McGarity on the defensive end. But I mentioned Michael Eckert, right? You look at the box score, 70% completion rate, almost 300 total yards, 3 total touchdowns. But despite some of those numbers, I thought Eckert looked a few ticks off all night. He was overthrowing a lot of his receivers, especially on deep balls. Many of his completions came on short throws, like on wide receiver screens, or he would find open guys in soft spots of that Central Bucks South zone defense for 5 to 10 yard gains. And as a result, the Skins offense really had trouble finding a consistent rhythm last Friday. Each of their first 2 touchdowns came on drives that began in Titan territory. It took them until late in the fourth quarter, that 36-yard touchdown run by Michael Eckert. That was the only score Neshaminy had on a drive that started on their side of the 50-yard line. And funny enough, that was actually a drive that started with their worst field position of the night. It started on their own 9, so they go 91 yards on that drive to cut it to 3. Defensively for Neshaminy, I thought they played really well. They just couldn't really get the stops when they needed it the most was the only problem. Central Bucks South, they were able to capture enough momentum as a result of that. And of course, that kind of goes back to Neshaminy's offense not being able to take momentum back whenever CB South would score. It would take Neshaminy a while to answer. The defense held its own, but Neshaminy's offense certainly didn't do them any favors. For the Titans, of their 24 points, 7 of them came because of the scoop and score, and then 7 also came after that kickoff return that set them up inside the Neshaminy 30. They were given short fields on their other 2 scoring drives as a result of the turnovers. Neshaminy, they actually held the Titans to just 216 total yards. They outgained them in this game, 371 to 216, a really interesting box score, and it's why sometimes when you look at the box score, it doesn't quite tell the full story. This is a clear-cut example of that right here. Neshaminy, if you just looked at the box score of this game, it's like, wow, they must have blown out Central Bucks South, but because of all the turnovers, CB South didn't have to go very far on their drives. They had easy opportunities at scores. Of course, Central Bucks South also won the special teams battle as well, and they get the win as a result of that. One bright spot for Neshaminy in this game, I alluded to it a couple minutes ago, but it's the emerging consistency of Brock Williams. And I know he had 10 catches last week. Many of them came on those drive-starting screenplays that we're really starting to see Nick Felis implement more and more, getting those quick throws to a guy like Williams on the first play of a drive, trying to get 4 or 5 yards, just a nice, easy drive starter play in front of the sticks. But it's clear that Michael Eckert is starting to trust the junior a lot more these last 2 weeks. He now has back-to-back 100-yard games after he didn't have a single 100-yard game through the air his entire career before this little stretch. He's got 16 catches during that span. And I think this can only benefit the Neshaminy offense because Brock Williams, his explosiveness, his speed, that makes him not only a deep ball threat, and we've seen that deep ball threat really the entire season, maybe none more so than in last week's game against Central Bucks East, or 2 weeks ago, I guess, the game against Central Bucks East, his playmaking ability, he had 2 touchdowns in that game, did Williams. But it also allows him to be a threat in the short passing game as well, because he could turn those into big games or big gains, especially the way that Neshaminy likes to begin those drives with those short completions, with those wide receiver screens. Williams, he could continue to put up big numbers like this. He could really be a force for Neshaminy come playoff time if he gets the ball as much as he has been these last couple of weeks. You put it in the hands of Brock Williams, and it could be a big play, whether it's a long pass down the field or just something short right around the line of scrimmage, because he can turn on the jets and run right by everybody. He's got that kind of playmaking ability. But I mentioned how Brock Williams could be a real threat for Neshaminy come playoff time. Speaking of the postseason, with this loss, the Skins dropped from 7th down to 10th in the PIAA District 1 Class 6A rankings, meaning that if the season ended today, they would now have to go on the road. They would face Souderton, who currently ranks as a 7 seed. Souderton, by the way, they are 8-1. Their lone losses against current number 1 seed Penridge this year. They'd have to play them in the first round with Neshaminy. Central Bucks South, for those of you wondering, they moved up a spot to 17th. And they're just barely on the outside looking in. They're just 20 power points back of Plymouth Whitemarsh for that final postseason spot. They take on Penridge this week. So, of course, a huge game for Central Bucks South coming up as they're looking to make this late season push into the postseason. Neshaminy, in terms of the power points, they're nearly 10, or in terms of the rankings rather, they're nearly 10 total points behind 8th place Ridley. This is in the ranking category, not in the PowerPoint category, so 10 points back is a much wider distance when it comes to that ranking as opposed to the PowerPoints. They're 10 points back of that 8th place team Ridley for home field advantage in the first round. And really for Neshaminy, it would take not only a win against Pennsbury tomorrow, but then a whole lot of help for the Skins to be able to get that first round home game next week. In fact, the Skins are actually tied with Haverford for 11th and 10th. Neshaminy has the tiebreaker there. So if they finish in a tie, Neshaminy would have the higher seed in that tiebreaker against Haverford. So in all likelihood, even with a win tomorrow for Neshaminy, the Skins are probably going to finish somewhere in that 9 through 12 range. Then if you look at it on a bit of a smaller scale, inside the Suburban 1 League National Division, the Skins are still alive for at least a share of the division title. Remember from last week I mentioned they had not won a divisional title since 2018. They can't win it outright anymore, but because Central Bucks West lost to North Penn last week, the path for Neshaminy to get at least a share of the division title becomes a lot easier. Currently, Penridge sits in first place at 5-1. They've already clinched a share of the division crown. And then Neshaminy, North Penn, Central Bucks West, and Central Bucks South, they are all 4-2. So for Neshaminy to get that division crown, get a share of it, they would need a win over Pennsbury and a Penridge loss to the surging CB South Titans. That would clinch a share of the division title for Neshaminy. And by the way, in case you were wondering, yes, there is a chance at a 5-way tie atop the division. Penridge would have to lose against CB South, while Neshaminy, North Penn, Central Bucks West, and of course Central Bucks South would all have to win. Central Bucks West takes on CB East, a struggling CB East team, while North Penn plays Abington. So while it is unlikely for there to be a 5-way tie, of course a lot would have to break right for that to happen. It is certainly something that is still in the realm of possibilities and would be a pretty crazy finish. I don't know the official rankings on this, but I would venture to guess that this would be the first time there would ever be a 5-way tie atop the SOL National Division. But all right, we've done all this talking about Neshaminy. Let's talk about their opponent this week in those Pennsbury Falcons when we come back Also going to preview this game, talking to play-by-play broadcaster Chris Ermer a little later on, and then Nottingham head coach Milo McGuire at the end of the show. Do not go anywhere. More High School Huddle is coming up right after this on the radio side, WBCB 1490 AM, 107.3 FM, and here on YouTube, WBCB Sports.
Capital Health's primary care network continues to grow, bringing its extensive option of locations to your neighborhood. Whether you're scheduling a wellness checkup or not feeling well, advanced medicine starts with a Capital Health primary care doctor at locations near you in Mercer, Bucks, and Burlington counties. To find a Capital Health primary care location that's convenient for you, visit capitalmedicalgroup.org. That's capitalmedicalgroup.org.
Are you a parrot head?
We stayed away again in Margarita.
Not that kind.
Oi dana, mother to papuga.
That's more like it. If you're this kind of parrot head, don't forget to check out the Denny-O Polka Show every Saturday from 9 a.m. to noon right here on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com.
We gathered real Pennsylvania seniors and asked them how they would benefit from an extra $1,000. Here's what they had to say.
Everything is so expensive these days.
Car expenses, repairs.
My groceries, heating costs.
Medications. I'm sure I could easily spend $1,000 like that.
Through Pennsylvania's property tax rent rebate program, eligible seniors and adults with disabilities could receive up to $1,000. Check your eligibility and apply online. Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
You're listening to the High School Huddle on WBCB 1490 AM and 107.3 FM. The High School Huddle is proudly brought to you by the Capital Health System and Anthony Petsis and Associates. Now back to your host, Jordan Hirsh.
Welcome back into the High School Huddle. I am your host, Jordan Hirsh. And before we continue to talk about this big rivalry game here in Bucks County that we've got tomorrow on WBCB Sports, of course I'm talking about Pennsbury and Neshaminy. We first have to talk about the brand new, but not really new anymore because it's been around for quite some time now. Last couple of months I've been talking about the WBCB Sports Instagram page. If you're not following it, I gotta ask, what are you doing? Because we're covering all sorts of high school sports, putting some great content up there on Instagram, some behind-the-scenes content from our coaches' roundtable discussion that Chris Ermer hosts every week from Sandy's Beef and Ale. We're going to be talking to Chris Ermer in just a little bit. I'm sure he's following the Instagram, considering how much he gets featured. We also do game previews on there, score updates. That's where we post some of our player of the game interviews, highlight reels, different highlights from throughout the season go up on the Instagram. We talk about this show as well as my other show, Friday Night Hype. So if you're looking for even more high school sports content in Bucks and Mercer County, make sure you head over to Instagram, drop a follow. We're at WBCB_SN on Instagram. Same on X as well. We're really trying to get that X Twitter page, whatever you want to call it, built up, posting a lot of the same stuff we do on Instagram over there on Twitter. So if that is your preferred platform, again, it's WBCB_SN. Go ahead over there, drop us a follow as well. All right. Last segment, we did a lot of talking about Neshaminy. Tough loss against Central Bucks South as they prepare for this rivalry game against the Falcons. Now let's talk about Pennsbury, because last week they beat up on Abington. 42-16 was the final score. Pennsbury gets their first win of the season. They improved to 1-8. And I don't know if there was anyone who saw that result coming. Yes, on my show, Friday Night Hype last week, I did predict that Pennsbury was going to get their first win of the year, just considering their advantage in the experience level and also their defensive prowess over the Galloping Ghosts. But really, under no circumstances did I think that game was going to be a blowout. The Falcons last week scored more points against Abington than they had in their first 8 games combined. 42 points last week after just 37 through the first 8 games. Just real incredible stuff that Pennsbury was able to do at Abington last week. It was a huge game for Luke Bagley. We're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. But for the Falcons, 42 points. It was the most they scored in a game since week 2 of the 2023 season when they beat William Tennant 45-0. And then it was the most they'd scored in an SOL National Division game since October 14th, 2022. They beat North Penn that day 44-34. That was part of a 9-2 season for the Falcons. And we got to talk about Luke Bagley, right? Monster game for him. He had 4 touchdowns in the first half alone. Pennsbury took a 35-0 lead into the locker room. And then after halftime, Abington comes out. They score a touchdown. They get the 2-point conversion, cut it to 35-8. Any momentum the Galloping Ghosts had there, it was quickly squashed by Bagley's 5th, count 'em 5 touchdowns on the night for him. Sean Beatty had a first quarter interception. Caden Brown, he also found the end zone for a touchdown for Pennsbury. And after the game, speaking with Suburban One insiders Braden DeSuma, Luke Bagley had this to say. He said, quote, "It feels amazing. Being able to play on offense and defense is an amazing opportunity." Of course, Bagley, a two-way player. He continued that quote saying that he's pumped to go against Neshaminy next week, and now he only has to wait one more day to get his crack at those Neshaminy Skins tomorrow night. And for Pennsbury, well, it's been a real disappointing season for the Falcons, yes. Picking up a big win like this, that always feels good for everybody involved. For the players who put in that hard work, continue to show up to practice, continue to play their hearts out game after game after game, week after week after week. The coaching staff as well. You know, Galen Snyder and his squad, very happy to get that first W. Also, of course, happy for the players that they've spent the entire season coaching up. The fact that they were not only able to get a win, but get a win in the fashion that they did, and really just show everybody that, you know, hey, it's been a tough year. We're 1-8. We're still a force to be reckoned with, and I think that's a perfect message that you want to be able to send ahead of this rivalry game with Neshaminy. And of course, it's big for the fans all year, the fans that have tuned in to each and every game, the fans that have shown up, shown their consistent support at Falcon Field, just down the road here from our studios in Levittown. It's got to feel good for them, and it's got to give the fans some hope, some confidence, and maybe energize them a little bit more. That's one of the things I'm going to talk to Chris Ermer about next segment, is the fan reaction from that win and now going into this game against Neshaminy. It's got to get them fired up. They're of course, they were going to be fired up for the Neshaminy game no matter what. It's the rivalry game. It's always the biggest game of the year in this area. But you get a win, and you get a blowout win over Abington. Those fans got to be feeling a lot more confident now, as opposed to how they were feeling maybe this time last week entering this matchup with Neshaminy. But all right, we've talked about the Skins. We've talked about the Falcons. We've talked about what happened last week. We've talked about what's gone on this season at both Falcon Field and at Heartbreak Ridge. And you know what? Here we go, because it's time to throw out all those records, all of the stuff that's happened these last 9 weeks. Throw it out the window, because Pennsbury and Neshaminy, it always delivers. Like I said, right, Falcons, they're riding high, got that win over Abington, while Neshaminy, they're looking to bounce back, they're looking to right the ship before they begin postseason play, and what better opportunity than to go into your biggest rival's home turf and get a win to be able to do that. And despite these two teams having these very different seasons up until this point, this game actually represents a battle of strength on strength. Neshaminy features the number 1 scoring offense in the National Division. They average 29.2 points per game. For Pennsbury, they sport the 3rd-ranked scoring defense. They're allowing just 15 points a contest. And while they are 3rd, the Falcons are actually very, very close to that top spot as well. They've allowed 135 total points. North Penn has given up 134, and Penridge has surrendered 127. And of course, the similarity for North Penn and Penridge is the fact that they're at the very top of the division. Pennsbury's playing just as good defense this year as some of the top teams in the Suburban 1 League National Division. And considering the Falcons have not allowed more than 20 points in a game all season long, the focus for Neshaminy, it's got to fall on their defense as well. Even though They scored 42 last week, did the Falcons. That Pennsbury offense still doesn't represent a major threat. Of course, they're still without Jordan Brenzinger. Luke Bagley, Caden Brown have filled in quite nicely. Of course, maybe none better than last week. But Neshaminy's defense has to be up the task. And if they do their job, I think 20 points, that should be enough for Neshaminy. The rushing defense for the Skins, it did an excellent job bouncing back last week. They're gonna have to be stout once again. Like I mentioned, Luke Bagley, Caden Brown, and this Falcons offense, that they're gonna run the ball 80 to 90% of the time. This will be yet another test for that defensive line for Neshaminy. Guys like Milo Makes, Owen Schwartz, Corey Kenoy Webb, and Lucas Stewart, who's been reinserted as one of the more utilized defensive ends for Neshaminy as he continues to work his way back from that injury that he sustained week 1. First, it was getting Lucas Stewart reinvigorated in the offense. Now they're getting him reacclimated to playing both sides of the football for the full 48 minutes. But those guys that I just mentioned, they're going to be tasked with slowing down Luke Bagley and company. It's a defensive front that's been challenged a lot in the run game recently. And while they had that really good week last week against Central Bucks South, they have been out on the field a lot here in the month of October. And them getting worn down is actually one of my concerns for the Skins this week. That defensive front has to do a good job on first and second down because, first of all, that's going to force Pennsbury to perhaps have to throw the ball a little bit more, and that's something the Falcons really would like to avoid. And then going off of that point, if Neshaminy's able to get those first and second down stops, that makes it more likely that the defense can get off the field, and that would be key for a unit that's been utilized as much as they have here the last 4 weeks. As for the Falcons, plain and simple, that defense, they got to force turnovers. Pennsbury's offense not well equipped to consistently sustain drives against a defense like Neshaminy's. So if they can keep those turnover problems going for the Skins, really Neshaminy, it was their first time last week that they had a problem with those turnovers. Of course, the 3 coming there in the first quarter. Pennsbury's got to keep Neshaminy's offense on that shaky ground. If they're able to do that, that's going to put them in the best position to win. I'm going to make my prediction for this game tomorrow on Friday Night Hype. Myself, Rich Fisher, we got you covered 4 to 5. Same platforms that you're listening on right now, WBCB 1490, AM 107.3 FM, and then over on YouTube, WBCB Sports. But with the way the Falcons play defense and the way these Pennsbury and Neshaminy games typically go, I am expecting a low-scoring, physical affair that could very well come down to just simply who has the ball last. Offensively for Pennsbury, I don't think there's a chance that Luke Bagley is going to replicate his 5-touchdown performance from last week, but he's going to have to be the guy if the Falcons want to pull this upset. Expect a heavy dose of him as he continues to look to carry over momentum from his career day against Abington last week. But for him to have success and for this game to be that knock-him-down physical affair that I'm predicting, the offensive line is going to have to continue to play the way they've been playing here as of late, especially last week. If the Falcons' offensive line can win the physicality battle and wear down that Neshaminy defensive front, that is what would give the Falcons the best chance of getting the W. And quickly here, taking a look at some of the history between these two sides in this matchup. In the Max Preps era, which goes back to 2004, Neshaminy leads the all-time series 12-10. Pennsbury's won 3 straight, including a wild 22-21 victory at Heartbreak Ridge last season. Last season's game between Pennsbury and Neshaminy, that really represented what Pennsbury and Neshaminy football is all about. Last year, whenever one team would score, the other would always respond. Pennsbury was playing from behind. They were playing catch-up. Neshaminy would score a touchdown. Falcons would answer right back. Then Neshaminy would go back on top. Falcons would come right back, tie the game. And then it all culminated late in the fourth quarter. Falcon running back Jordan Brenzinger, who's missed most of this season with an injury, he scored a touchdown from 21 yards out with 42.5 seconds to go. He then made a key block on a successful 2-point try, which gave the Falcons the lead. Neshaminy would get the ball right to the fringes of field goal range. They tried a desperation 52-yard field goal attempt at the buzzer. Of course, in high school, anything further than, say, 35, 40 yards very tough to knock down. That field goal attempt was unsuccessful, and as a result of that win for Pennsbury, they snuck their way in the District 1 6A tournament. Of course, the Falcons can't really do that this time around, but just so often do you see this game between Pennsbury and Neshaminy. It has some type of tournament and postseason implications, as it does this time around for Neshaminy, not so much for Pennsbury. Taking a look at the Neshaminy stats from that game, Falcons didn't provide it, but they did a good job handling Michael Eckert, who went just 11 for 25, 132 yards and a touchdown. On the ground, Eckert had a good game, 13 carries, 114 yards and 2 scores. Carter Klee was held pretty much in check, 18 rushes, 58 yards last season. Lucas Stewart had a nice game through the air, 3 catches, 49 yards. Mike Sassano with 2 catches and 17 yards, and he was flying around on defense, 12 total tackles for Sassano. Here's the one big thing for Neshaminy's defense last season against Pennsbury. They had just 1 tackle for loss the whole game. That's not going to cut it tomorrow against a run-heavy offense like Pennsbury. You got to be able to meet these guys like Luke Bagley and Caden Brown in the backfield, get them down behind the line of scrimmage, force Pennsbury to play from behind the sticks. That will give Neshaminy the best opportunity to win tomorrow if their defensive line can make those initial hits, get past the Pennsbury O-line that had a really good game last week, and get to Bagley and Brown in the backfield. Like I mentioned, Pennsbury, they've won 3 consecutive meetings over Neshaminy. They've outscored the Skins 85-45 during that span. Neither team has ever won 4 straight against each other during the Max Preps era. 3 of the last 4 games have been decided by 1 possession. And I mentioned how the Falcons, they haven't given up more than 20 points all season. Well, since these 2 teams met in the quarterfinals of the postseason back in 2017, since that game, when one team scores 20 or more points in this matchup, that team is 7-0. So you can kind of look at it as probably first to 20 wins this game tomorrow night. Again, 7 o'clock kickoff, 6:40 pregame. Chris Ermer, Gus Barber, Ben Goldstein, they've got the call. I'm going to be there too. I'm going to be part of the crew, but I'm not going to have the headset on. At least I don't think so. I'll be on camera work, so I will still be in attendance for what's bound to be a fantastic matchup between Pennsbury and Neshaminy, like it always is on WBCB Sports. All right, though, when we come back, we're going to continue with the theme of Pennsbury and Neshaminy. Going to be talking to the man who will be calling tomorrow's game on play-by-play, the one and only Chris Ermer, on the other side of this break here on the High School Huddle. Today's show is proudly sponsored by Anthony Petsis and Associates, voted the best financial advisory firm in Bucks County for 13 years by the Bucks County Courier-Times. Anthony Petsis and Associates delivers people-centered advice, empowering you to take control of your financial future with confidence. Their firm is committed to helping your family build and preserve wealth for the next 100 years. If you're interested in becoming a client of the top-rated financial advisory firm in Bucks County, please contact Anthony Petsis and Associates at 215-968-6638. That's 215-968-6638. You can also visit their website at apetsis.com. Anthony Petsis and Associates. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
Capital Health's primary care network continues to grow, bringing its extensive option of locations to your neighborhood. Whether you're scheduling a wellness checkup or not feeling well, advanced medicine starts with a Capital Health primary care doctor at locations near you in Mercer, Bucks, and Burlington counties. To find a Capital Health primary care location that's convenient for you, visit capitalmedicalgroup.org. That's capitalmedicalgroup.org.
You're listening to the High School Huddle on WBCB 1490 AM and 107.3 FM. The High School Huddle is proudly brought to you by the Capital Health System and Anthony Petsis and Associates. Now back to your host, Jordan Hirsh.
Welcome back into the High School Huddle. I am your host, Jordan Hirsh, and now joining me on the line, a very special guest, the man who will be calling the play-by-play of tomorrow's big Pennsbury-Neshaminy matchup from Falcon Field, the one and only Chris Ermer. Chris, how you doing today?
Jordan, doing great. Thank you so much for having me back on the Huddle, and looking forward to the rivalry being renewed Neshaminy, Pennsbury, Friday Night Lights on WBCB. And rivalry week, got a lot of great games coming up.
Oh, yeah, there's great games all over Bucks and Mercer County this week, but this is the biggest one of them all. And for Pennsbury, they get their first win of the season last week, 42-16 against Abington. What allowed the Falcons to have the offensive success that they did in last week's game?
Well, they got back to ground and pound, and in part it was due to a change of personnel. They put Luke Bagley in the backfield, and he went bananas. An outstanding night for Bagley, 5 touchdowns. Caden Brown, their fullback, also getting into the end zone. But that change of personnel seemed to unlock the ground and pound approach for the Pennsbury Falcons, and Galen went right back to it. They've been mixing in a little bit more of the air attack with sophomore quarterback Jack Arndt, but last week they did not need it. They ran the football right down the throats of the Ghosts, and the Pennsbury defense did what they've done throughout the season, which is play pretty much lights out on that side of the football.
And then what's the most impressive aspect of that game last week? Because I think a lot of people viewed it as the best opportunity for the Falcons to get a win, but I don't think anyone thought they would blow out the Galloping Ghosts the way that they did.
I kind of thought it was a possibility if they got the run game going that it could start to avalanche in the right direction for the Falcons. I'm not sure what to put my finger. I think they've been playing pretty good football. They're not getting credit for having some of the pieces there and just not being able to have one missed assignment on certain plays. And we hear that cliche all the time in the world of football, but I think there's something to that when you look at the Pennsbury offense. They just haven't been able to get anything to click. And fortunately for them, the defense has kept them in every game, and that's one of the things I expect on Friday night. Who knows how it's going to play out, but I don't think the Falcons are going to get blown out by Neshaminy because the defense has been stout against pretty much every league team, including Penridge and North Penn.
Now, it's been a tough season for the Falcons. You can't really sugarcoat it, right? Just 1-8. But who are some players that have stepped up as the year has gone along?
Well, one of the guys I mentioned, Luke Bagley, who has been a mainstay for them on the defensive side of the football. He was a special teams asset as he had a blocked punt earlier in the season that he recovered in the end zone for one of the Pennsbury touchdowns in a game where they were shut out on the offensive side of the football. Then they mixed him in as running back last week. So as the season has gone on, he has really emerged as a major player for this Pennsbury Falcon team. And then the other guy who we've seen the development of, it's been some ebbs and flows, some ups and downs. Quarterback Jack Arndt. That's one of the big differences between one of the many differences that I would point to when you look at the Falcons and Neshaminy is that Neshaminy coming into the season, they had a ready-made QB. They had ready-made skill position guys on that side of the football. And for the Falcons, they have been trying to build the offense, find what works all season long. And, last week maybe they were able to unlock something. But as you said, it's been a struggle this year for Falcon football.
Now, the defense has actually been real solid all season long. They haven't allowed an opponent to score over 20 points the entire year. What's made that group so effective, especially going up against some really good offenses in the SOL National Division?
They've consistently been able to do what you need to do at the high school level. Job number one, stop the run. Guys up front like Jackson Coons, who's an underclassman and had a really good season, has started to emerge. Even amidst losing Henry Garlitz as one of their inside linebackers, they've had LaRue Madison step up and Justin Depew playing very well in the secondary. So, each game, just as a unit, I think that they've done a very nice job. And a bunch of different guys on any given night, like week 3 or 4, Sylvester Jones, who's one of their edge rushers, had a significant impact on the game. And then the next couple of games, not so much. Last week, did some things against Abington. So there have been different guys being able to contribute. They have a very deep and, at this season now, or at this point in the season, experienced defense. And so I know they're hanging their hat on that one, or hanging their hat on that aspect when it comes to Friday night here in this big rivalry game.
Now, this next question is one that I ask all the coaches that I talk to on the show, but I want to get your take on it as well. Are there any players on Pennsbury that you feel have flown under the radar this year, guys that haven't gotten the recognition that they deserve?
Oh, my goodness. I'm not a coach, so I'm not sure I'm qualified to chime in on some of this stuff. And, Luke Bagley, again, might be one of those guys who has kind of flown under the radar, as he's, one of the other elements with Pennsbury is that they've moved guys around in different positions. They would have, Bagley last week playing running back throughout the year. He's been in there as a linebacker. So throughout the season, I think maybe he's flown under the radar because they've moved him around to some different areas. So I'll nominate him as one of the guys. The other one, I'll point to Dante Ciola, the Pennsbury tight end, who last week he was replaced by Connor O'Brien, one of the Pennsbury captains, and I'm not sure what was at play there. They moved Ciola to edge rusher. So again, they kind of move these versatile players in different spots where they need them. But then it's hard to identify sometimes the contributions that they're making throughout the season at one spot or another because they're at different spots. But Ciola has been targeted as tight end. He's got all the measurables, and I think he's flown under the radar because they just don't throw the football a lot. So in a ground and pound kind of offense, Ciola, a skill position guy like Sean Beatty, who came up with an amazing tip drill, INT, so plays a significant role in the secondary, but also as a wide receiver before the season, Coach Snyder was saying, he's one of the great athletes in the area, but hasn't really been able to showcase that because, again, it's a more run first, run heavy kind of thing for the Falcons.
Now, Chris, you're around the fan base every week. You get to see some of the crowds that Pennsbury draws. And despite only having the one win, do you think that the fans are going to be as hyped up as they typically are for this game?
Yes, no question about it. And one of the key things is the big win over Abington, carrying a little bit of momentum into this game. And recognizing Neshaminy has had a couple of slip-ups throughout this season. And against good defenses, they haven't lit up the scoreboard. So I think there's a lot to be optimistic about in this game for Pennsbury, maybe going into it with a false sense of optimism. But this defense has been really good. If they can stay in the game, who knows, on a rivalry, throw the records out, all that cliche stuff, it applies.
Well, now, I've been using that cliche throughout the entire show because with this matchup, you usually do throw those records out the window. Neshaminy, they're 6-3, still fighting for home field advantage in the first round of the District 1 6A tournament. Pennsbury, just the one win. This is going to be the final game of their season. How do you see it playing out on the field on Friday?
Oh, geez. It's hard not to see how Neshaminy is not going to be able to come away with more points, somehow figure out a way to get into the end zone to, Pennsbury has really struggled to score. So they've got to keep it low scoring against a good Neshaminy defense. So I'm not a big predictions guy. I give it a chance to be a really good game. And that's what I look forward to the most when we get ready to do our thing and, highlight these student athletes on WBCB, that we get a really a good contest that comes down to the wire. And I think there's a shot of that. Hey, one more thing. You talk about throwing the records out and the rivalries and stuff. One game that I wouldn't throw the records out on, and I want to credit the Council Rock South Golden Hawks with a great season so far. They're now 8-1, a top 5 district team. Looks like they're going to win the league as long as they can get past Council Rock North, and that seems like a sure thing. I mean, that one, the records I think are indicative of where those two teams are, and I don't know. It's hard to give Council Rock North any kind of shot in that game. That would be a huge, epic kind of upset.
Yeah, Council Rock South, they've certainly put together a fantastic season. That's one of the possible opponents for Neshaminy in the first round of the playoffs. But, Chris, last thing I want to ask you is you've been calling Pennsbury football for a long time. You've gotten a lot of opportunities to call some really great, exciting games between these two teams. What are some of your favorite memories over the years calling this Pennsbury and Neshaminy game?
Oh, my gosh. It was a couple of years ago, I think, where they had Pennsbury scored a touchdown late in the game, and they went for the 2-point conversion. They got it. I don't know. It was one of those kind of 2-point conversion scenarios, and that's the kind of game I always hope for. So I hope we can get that type of fourth quarter finish that comes right down to the wire. But one of the other elements that I always think of when people ask me about this stuff is that I have a certain amnesia with all the games I've done and all the different matchups we've called on WBCB. It is hard for me to look back and be like, oh yeah, I remember this game. One of my other favorite Neshaminy Pennsbury memories was we had a frigid night. Vince Reed was on the call, and he went to take care of business at halftime, right? He had to make sure that he was ready for the second half, needed a little bit of relief. When he came back, it was like it was so cold that his mouth almost froze or something. I mean, in the second half, he could hardly get the words out because it was such a cold night. And I don't know, that one always sticks out to me, just for the atmosphere and the temperature, and we found the human limitations on that game for what we could endure. Like, we needed to bring 5 extra jackets and a couple of space heaters.
Well, it's bound to be another game with great energy tomorrow. Hopefully not quite as cold as that Vince Reed game. But, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the High School Huddle.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jordan. Great job this season.
Well, there you have it. That was the voice of Pennsbury Falcon Athletics, Chris Ermer. He'll be on play-by-play tomorrow for the game between Pennsbury and Neshaminy. Biggest game in Bucks County, as it always is. You throw the records out the window. I don't care if Chris said it's a cliche. That's what you got to do with this matchup. But do not go anywhere, because we're going to take a quick detour into Mercer County for the end of the show, talking with Nottingham head coach Milo McGuire. His team's got a big rivalry game against Steinert this week, and that interview is coming up next right here on the High School Huddle. Today's show is proudly sponsored by Anthony Petsis and Associates, voted the best financial advisory firm in Bucks County for 13 years by the Bucks County Courier-Times. Anthony Petsis and Associates delivers people-centered advice, empowering you to take control of your financial future with confidence. Their firm is committed to helping your family build and preserve wealth for the next 100 years. If you're interested in becoming a client of the top-rated financial advisory firm in Bucks County, please contact Anthony Petsis and Associates at 215-968-6638. That's 215-968-6638. You can also visit their website at apetsis.com. Anthony Petsis and Associates. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
Join us weekday mornings at 11 for Album Sides. Gonna spin some of the best albums of all time. It's Album Sides with yours truly, the philosopher Chris Ermer. Weekday mornings at 11 right here on 107.3 FM and 1490 WBCB. You can also listen live at WBCB1490.com. Head out to Dion Square, located at South Oxford Valley and South Olds Boulevard, to get all your essentials in one place, with the following businesses ready to serve you: Pat Dion Beverages, CVS Pharmacy, Hair Cuttery, Smile Culture Dental, Biomat, Liberty Auto Tags, Pennsylvania Fine Wine and Spirits, Lee's Hoagie House, R&J Smoothies and Juices, AutoZone, and First National Bank and Trust of Newtown. Make Dion Square your one stop for all your shopping needs at South Oxford Valley Road and South Olds Boulevard in Fairless Hills.
You're listening to the High School Huddle on WBCB 1490 AM and 107.3 FM. The High School Huddle is proudly brought to you by the Capital Health System and Anthony Petsis and Associates. Now back to your host, Jordan Hirsch.
Welcome back in to the High School Huddle. I am your host, Jordan Hirsch, and now I'm joined by another very special guest, Nottingham football head coach Milo McGuire. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Jordan. Thank you.
Well, hey, thanks for coming on. And so last week, you guys came up a little bit short in the 14-7 loss against Notre Dame. I just want to get your overall thoughts from that game as a whole.
I mean, we came out fighting and scrapping, and if it wasn't for a couple plays here or there, I mean, it could have been an overtime ball game that would have been for the ages. But, sometimes that's how the ball bounces. Hat goes off to those guys. They kept fighting. And so, that's how it ended for us.
And just the one win so far this season, but each of your last three games have been close. Also played a really good Northern Burlington team, tough in that Week 0 game. How do you feel like your team has battled throughout this season?
I mean, the battle is the main word. We've been battling and scrapping every game. We sometimes, like I said, the ball doesn't bounce our way. And, at the end of the day, you look at the final outcome of the schedule, of the record so far, and you say, oh, those guys, they're just not, they don't have anything, which is untrue. We got a lot of pieces, and a lot of guys are doing their best they can. It's just, sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way, but they're scrapping.
And you've used three different quarterbacks at times this year in Dante Vasquez, James Rumpf, and then last week with Ted Mondesir. What's gone into the decisions to give all of those guys opportunities this year?
Well, Dante was our starter. He's our 3-year starter, so, obviously he has the first go of things. And then with James and Ted, you want to have your best athlete have the ball at all times and have them make the decisions that they can, at a certain time in the schedule when you're like, we got to get some wins, we got to pull them together. And so that's what you want to do. That's the mind frame that we came into it with. We want to get our best athlete with the ball. And that's just how I draw it up to.
And Dante Vasquez, of course, a senior. He's been the main staple at the quarterback position at Nottingham the last 3 seasons. How has he handled having to take a step back at times this season?
He has handled it tremendously. I mean, if you go back and look at the games, he's not taking off the field. I mean, he scored, I think, since that point, 2 or 3 rushing touchdowns. He's got a receiving touchdown. So he's in the game, and he's a vital part of our game. So that's a big important factor with it, because had he not been a part of these games, it might be totally different outcomes. So he's doing very well with it, and he's all about the team.
And then I know your other 2 quarterbacks, and James Rumpf, I know he's dealt with some injury problems, and then Ted Mondesir got that opportunity last week. What have you liked out of what those 2 guys have shown you this season, playing quarterback, guys that haven't really been experienced at that position this season?
Very dynamic athletes, playmakers. So, a defense has to account for what they can do in the air and on the ground. And that puts a lot of pressure on the defense, because when you're just not just one-sided, you got to put some due diligence into your reports. So that's the biggest deal, just great athletes.
And then for you guys on defense, the defense has played well at times this season, especially these last 4 weeks. What has contributed to that unit's success?
Guys are getting back healthy. We started the season with a couple starters out of the lineup because they were, banged up a little bit. Guys are getting back, and we're just trying to, be as scrappy as we can and get after that ball. We really are. Mentality has not changed. We're just trying to get back to as much as full force as we could.
And then how important is it that some of your top players on the defense, that guys like Nate Adoye, Malcolm Lusant, Zaquan Kohlers-Boyd, that they're having the kind of year that they're having just as juniors, the fact that those guys are going to be back next season, how important is that for your program?
I mean, it's awesome. You go back down to the years when we were making a name for ourselves. Our D-line was a presence. So when you have a defensive line that's a presence, it makes a lot of things easier for you. It really does. So I'm glad that those guys are showcasing their talents and they're being able to, just let everybody see what they can do.
And then senior Gene Bosquet, he's been your team's #1 receiver really all season. 20 catches, 446 yards, 4 touchdowns so far. What makes him such a good receiver in your eyes?
He's a deep ball threat. So whenever you have a deep ball threat, there's always the possibility that, the ball can go over the top, so you got to keep an eye on him and stuff like that. So that changes games up a little bit too. So, it's good to have that with him.
And then are there any players on your team that you feel have flown under the radar this season, guys that perhaps aren't getting the kind of recognition that they deserve?
Under the radar, that's a very good question. I mean, there's a lot of kids, like a lot of guys on the offensive line who would never get credit, like a kid like Joe Septek, he's undersized, he doesn't wow you with his appearance, but I mean, the way that he, as a general for the offensive line, is really, really needed and it's appreciated. But you'll never hear any tabloids about him. So I guess I'd say it's a kid like that.
And then now on Saturday, you guys host Steinert. Of course, every opponent of the Spartans, they always pay special attention to slowing down Isaac Pate, as I'm sure you guys have done this week leading up to this game. What will be the plan of attack going up against Pate?
Oh, my gosh. I mean, that kid is phenomenal. He's the best back in the county, bar none. And listen, you just want to slow him up. You really do, man. My hat goes off to all those guys over there. They really put in the work and put in the time with those kids. And, I mean, the kid he's a really good back, really shifty, really fast. You want to do as much as you can to throw things at him that they haven't seen and just try to slow him down, really.
And then offensively, who should we expect to see starting at quarterback on Saturday? And then what will be the game plan going up against a Steinert defense that up until last week, they had only allowed over 20 points twice all season?
Very good question. To be honest with you, we got guys banged up. All 3 quarterbacks are banged up as we speak right now. So we actually don't know right now. So that to answer your question, we don't. That's a game time decision. All 3 guys are banged up. So we'll have to see what happens.
All right, and then lastly, a few weeks ago, you guys kept it close against Hamilton West, ultimately fell 19-13. How important would getting a win over Steinert, of course, another one of your Hamilton area rivals, be to close out this regular season?
With a season like ours right now where, the chips have fallen a little bit and we're kind of down in spirits, it'll be a great, great victory for us. Just for the simple fact that it's the, battle of Clock in the Road, then you're in the run-ins for the Joe Loeb Trophy again. So it's just, it means a lot to us, especially where we are with our high school. Not a lot of schools in the state can say that there's 3 schools in that township and they all battle for something. So it means a lot. It really does.
All right, Coach. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk to me here on the High School Huddle, and good luck on Saturday against Steinert.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. That was Nottingham head coach Milo McGuire. It's been a tough season for the North Stars this year, but as you could tell there from the way he was speaking, still a really great group of kids, and they're going up against the Steinert team that, these rivalry games, like I've been talking about it with Pennsbury and Neshaminy all show long, really, these you never really know what's going to happen. Sometimes you got to throw the records out the window. Of course, Steinert, the much better team on paper, a team that's going to go to the postseason. Nottingham with just one win, but that's a very similar storyline, right, as to what we've been talking about with Pennsbury and Neshaminy. And this Steinert-Nottingham game, I think it's going to be a lot better of a matchup than maybe some people expect. I'm going to be making my prediction for this game on Friday Night Hype tomorrow from 4 to 5. I hope you will join myself and Rich Fisher then on whichever platform you are listening to the High School Huddle right now. Of course, you can listen on the radio, WBCB 1490 AM, 107.3 FM, as well as on YouTube, WBCB Sports. That game, by the way, between Nottingham and Steinert, it goes off on Saturday at noon. We will have that game for you on YouTube at WBCB Sports, 12 o'clock kickoff. Pre-game will get you started around 11:45, so make sure you tune into that one. A lot of rivalry games going on all around the network this week. Obviously with Pennsbury and Neshaminy here in Bucks County, but some really good games that we've got for you tomorrow and on Saturday over in Mercer County as well. So make sure you stay tuned to WBCB Sports the entire weekend for complete high school football coverage, the final weekend of the regular season here in Bucks and Mercer County. But that's going to just about do it for myself here on the High School Huddle. As always, I thank you so much for tuning in. If you're on the radio side, Glenn Jones is next. If you're on the YouTube side, how about you head over to the radio side, give Glenn Jones a listen on WBCB 1490 AM, 107.3 FM. Make sure you tune in tomorrow from 4 to 5 o'clock for Friday Night Hype. And until then, I thank you all for listening, and have a great night, everybody.